continue with our study, volume 38, Sutta Discovery, volume 38, chapter 4, Love, a Buddhist Perspective, page 81. We'll be looking at love as the most important of human activity, if you like, or even spiritual activity. Indeed, any kind of human activity that is beyond our daily grind, so to speak, must have love. Because without love, we will not progress, we will not grow. If we want to really be more than merely body, or even merely mind, we need to have love. Love covers body, mind, and higher aspects. We have talked about that in the previous talk, previous lecture. Love gives us an idea of the need for connection. And this is what makes the human race so successful. We're able to connect with one another. We're able to share ideas. We're able to work together. We're able to think together. We're able to feel for one another. And this feeling for each other is very dramatic. It's unlike any other beings, especially the subhuman realms. Indeed, if we fail to truly feel, we fall to the subhuman planes. And this is another way of looking at Buddhism, very simple level, kind of psychosocial level, if you like. To be a Buddhist is to at least remain on the human level. The human level is a thinking level, feeling level, creative level, loving level. If you fall below the human level, you won't be creative, you'll be destructive, you'll be violent, you'll be lustful, you have all the negative emotions. So when we talk of positive emotions keep us at least on the human level. But the positive emotions which we have taught last, and there's a special study on the 4 positive emotions which will follow this, these 4 positive emotions will lift up even beyond the human level to the divine level. So we don't need to even so-called go to heaven to be godlike or angel-like. Right here in this very body and mind, we can experience godliness. For godliness comes from humanity itself. If there are no humans, there are no gods. The gods die when humans fail to worship them. So this is the world we create. We must have feelings for this, in this world, with this world, for this world, because we are living in it, so to speak. So love gives this whole worldly life meaningful, happy. But then, of course, we can't just think in terms of being happy, because it's a nice word, yeah, but being happy is sometimes can be meaningless. You can have all the things in the world. You ask this rich man, "Are you happy?" He says, "Yes, I'm happy." Only happy what he has. But then, if he looks deeper in the privacy of close friends, he'll say, "Really, actually, this, actually that. There's some things I'm not happy about." Even when you talk about love, you might feel that you have everything you want in love, but you might still find something missing. For example, a young person may think that he falls in love, and then he feels that this is what he wants in life, this particular person. So this is a kind of, we can call this a post-parental love, if you like. That is page 81. 3.2.3.1, 3231. Of course, our love life, if you like, begins with our parents. Our parents show us love. Most of us were fortunate enough to have parental love. And we feel so secure, safe, happy. And such children who have parental love are likely to grow up wholesomely, happily in the future, to become happy parents themselves. The sad truth is that the patterns we have seen, and can be seen if you look around carefully, if the parents set a bad example, the children will follow, likely to follow. Parents who divorce, the children also are likely to divorce, for example. Children who are violent or cruel will harm their children, and it's very difficult for the children to change unless they go through some kind of really, very powerful life experience, maybe a wonderful teacher, a wonderful religious experience. So this post-parental love is another stage that young people must go through. In other words, having been loved, this young person must learn how to love. And as you know, in learning very often we make mistakes. In fact, we learn from mistakes. That's why we have to go to school. A lot of people don't see this, In a sense, you might say we go to school to make mistakes. Because we don't make mistakes, we don't have to go to school. But the mistakes are made in a systematic way. It's the way the scientists make mistakes. I mean, if you look at physics today, the scientists will tell you it is because of the mistakes they made that keeps them paid, that makes them professional. Without the mistakes, in normal physics, they won't have a profession. So they keep on guessing, cooking up theories of the world, theories for existence, looking for problems to solve, In some sense, they wish they will never solve the problem. Once the problem is solved, they're out of jobs. So they keep on looking for new problems, new ideas, new way of looking for answers. And when someone has come up with an answer, the next generation has to make sure they knock it down. Newton was very successful in his time. Newton was not a very honest man, by the way. He was quite a nasty character as a person, but he was a great scientist, yes. Then he was, in a sense, overshadowed by Einstein. Einstein is quite different from Newton. And now they're coming up with new ideas. So we have to learn, as humans, we have to learn from our mistakes. But that is why it's okay to fail in love. I mean, teenagers just feel really bad if they fail in love. They think that the whole world is collapsed around them. They think they are failures just because they failed the first time. As a rule, I think we should remember, first time usually, it's not a failure. Don't call it a failure. Call it a learning process. I've written a whole reflection on to learn, to love is to learn. If you really want to love people, you have to learn how to love. And the best way to learn about love is to learn from mistakes. We don't know what to do. We just do. Out of love, we just do things. We do silly things of love. And then we see how does it go. Is it okay? Is it not okay? How can we refine this? How can we mature ourselves? And as we grow older, we become more expert in doing these things. Then life gets boring another way. So in a sense, we're going to the most fun period in our life. We don't even know it. When you're teenagers, falling in love, falling out of love. And that's a problem. When you fall in love, you can also fall out of love. Yeah? One of the greatest human tragedy is to see a young man doing all his best, courting a girl, writing poems and giving things and saying the nicest things in the world. But once they're married, you don't hear that anymore. Once the baby starts crying, you know the story. The point is, this part of our life where we try to impress another person, we call it romantic love. The kind of stuff that many Hindi movies are made of, running from tree to tree and singing in groups, and I get goosebumps at such movies, although the music can be quite good sometimes. But I mean, well, it's an expression of human joy, but be very careful. This is not real life. Okay. So romantic love is a very important aspect of our life, which we must go through and we have to understand what it really is. It's an exuberant feeling of wanting to connect with others and of showing, of discovering our abilities, our youth, our beauty, our intelligence, our needs. We need someone, we want someone. So in a sense, we are still not complete. We feel that, our life is only complete, my life is only complete if I have you. Well, this idea of I, you, I, thou, the kind of idea. All these ideas later are lifted to a higher level. This romantic love goes up to higher levels. It's called theology, People, they can't fall in love with other human beings, so they fall in love with an imaginary idea called God. It's still romantic love. That's why it doesn't work for most people. Or you must have dogmas and rules and a power mode in order to make this kind of relationship work. So you have to come back to your humility again, letting go even of the idea of God. So this romantic love, it's also a class love. In a class system, because the romantic love actually started in the 12th century, Middle Ages, very distinct separation of the sexes, men, women, their roles. Men are supposed to be strong, the knights, the fighters, the warriors, and even then you must belong to a special class. Not everybody is a warrior. The others are the peasants who have to serve the rich. And then you have the women. The women are supposed to be weak and submissive. They have to play hard to get, or get into trouble somehow. And usually there are dragons, things like that. The dragons are always bad in the West, but in the East the dragons are special beings. So again here you have cultural perceptions of the dragon. So women are made to play this submissive role, and here comes this knight in shining armor to save this woman. So that's romantic love. It's a love that puts women in their place, so to speak. So you know very well it doesn't work today, but especially in Singapore. Singapore is the other extreme. It's a desert of love. So this is where we need loving kindness, we need meditation. Singapore needs Buddhist loving kindness for its own mental health. Because if we do not know how to love ourselves, we will never know how to love others. And if we are not able to see goodness in other people, we can never learn to grow and to love. If we keep on measuring things, measuring people, it's very hard for us to love. Because love is something immeasurable. Because it's like falling in love. Once you fall in love, the moment of falling in love, in a sense it's like striking lottery first prize. You feel so happy that you've got everything in the world. You feel so rich. It's very hard to describe it. That's how some people are able to write poetry and beautiful things about love, as long as they're in love with it. But once they fall out of love, all the energy is gone. But some people, they're able to remember this feeling. And to them, it's like a mystical experience, right? Mystical means you can't describe it. You can't put it into words. It's so beautiful. And you lose yourself. You don't feel I, thou anymore. You feel a sense of oneness, of unity. And that's what marriage tries to emulate, tries to copy. In marriage, or at least the ideal idea of marriage is man, woman, husband, wife. They are partners. They are meant to work as one, move as one. Not very easy, but possible. Like the kind of Buddhist work we're doing here. My wife and I, we're working as one, and we are a great team. And it's possible. Last week's reflection was on this possibility. It's possible because we have a love that is above ourselves. We have a love that is higher than ourselves, a vision, if you like. That's the Dharma. Dharma keeps us together because we don't just love ourselves. When you love yourself, you find after a while there's always something missing in each other. We always find faults in each other. Two people live together, you can be sure that every day you look at each other, the same bed, same house, sitting at the same table, doing the same things, And if you stay apart, you get another problem, right? So, if there's something higher and meaningful, you find you try your best to work towards this higher purpose. Of course, if there's no religion, that purpose might be children. and they're having children. And that keeps, of course, provided both parents have the same love for the children, and the children return the love. It's really wonderful. So if there's something high in our lives, then that marriage becomes purposeful. So when we talk about this kind of love, there is a sense of going beyond the self, if you like. And yet, if you understand this kind of love that goes beyond the self, then it becomes a mystical love, a religious love, if you like. And sometimes you do hear the description of this kind of feeling in Western religions. Not so much in Buddhism, because in Buddhism we are very clear about loving kindness and compassion and so on. So for example, in the Catholic tradition especially, you have this, you must remember that the Catholic tradition, especially the contemplative tradition, the mystical tradition, they are profoundly influenced by the Buddhist contemplative tradition. It's something the Catholics rarely admit, though some of their true practitioners do share this kind of common understanding. Take for example, these two very famous people, famous Catholic saints, St. John of the Cross and St. Teresa of Avila, is mentioned at page 82 at the top. They went into great ecstasy, joy of their own meditation. Of course, they use the word God in their own context. But St. John of the Cross managed to experience something so deep that he could not explain it. In fact, he had no way of understanding this fantastic, this wonderful experience. He got to a deep state where he has no more sense of self. He felt he's going through this dark night. He calls it a dark night of the soul, totally abandoned even by God himself. He felt terrified and lost, and yet a sense of awe and joy at the same time. So he was talking about all this, Now if you have done meditation before and you know jhana meditation, you understand, you begin to say, wow, this man is talking about jhanic experience. But the Christians and the Catholics could not understand this until they were taught the Buddhist ideas of jhana. So this is where, what's interesting is, people who are truly spiritual, who understand their scriptures and they go beyond their scriptures, beyond the written word, they experience this deep peace and joy and oneness with everything around them. They experience the same thing in a manner of speaking. And there's no religion for this. It's the, if you like, you can call it the religion of non-self, if you like. It contradicts almost everything they've learned. And yet it's so powerful, so personal, so spiritual. And it's really happy, really blissful. So this is one aspect which really is difficult to talk about. We can only meet such people, maybe hear them, and they talk in strange ways, and yet so beautiful. So this is one area we have to live on its own. Maybe we can kind of discover this for ourselves one day. I'm trying to teach something in this direction. We're trying to launch a new series of studies, Introduction to Dhyana, where we try to get people to sit a bit longer, get into some focused state, and then see how you experience. You may or may not get dhyana, but the idea is the possibility of dhyana. A little bit of joy also. It will give you an idea what it's like further. So this can help us to understand this very wonderful aspect of Buddhist emotion, higher emotions. Now coming back to our topic, really topic of romantic love, but then you have another kind of worldly love. It's called puppy love. Now puppy love is basically time out of time love, love that is out of time. Okay, a young person suddenly shows the love of an adult. Now this is not that bad really. It's just that it's not the right time. Imagine a little, say, 8-year-old boy or 9-year-old boy showing love for an elderly woman. So it won't work. It's illegal also. But the point is, if this person can show this love, it shows a certain sense of maturity. So the adult has to take some effort to explain why this kind of love is good, but not the right time, so to speak. So, in a sense, you might say this person is precocious, but he has to still kind of hold on a bit, maybe express a love in other things like doing some work or creating something beautiful. Of course, it is still a happy kind of love. But unrequited love is painful. Unrequited love is when you try to love someone, but the person doesn't return the love. Maybe because you're shy, embarrassed to show it, or maybe the other person feels that you're not the right one. Whatever it is something we have to learn. In love, there's nothing success or failure, it's learning. Making friends with someone you love is only the beginning. You got to start learning how this person thinks, feels, acts, and you yourself, how you respond to the situation. And the two have to synchronize and to work together. And the idea is to have this very positive attitude towards another. There's one secret ingredient for any kind of love affair to really succeed healthily. The secret ingredient is, again, loving kindness. Because without loving kindness, no love will succeed. Why? Loving kindness is unconditional acceptance of the other person. Unconditional acceptance of yourself. You love someone, you have a date with this person comes late. Are you willing to forgive this person? Or worse, the person forgot the date. Are you willing to forgive this person? Things like that, So if you're able to give this kind of space and total acceptance, then it will work. But there's another ingredient, not so secret in this case. Well, in a sense it is secret because we do not know it. It is in the past life also we have associated with one another. So if in the past you associated with one another, that brings you together. But whether you stay together or not depends on present conditions. So you need two. You need two kinds of conditions. So both these conditions are mentioned in a very beautiful verse. It's called an embedded verse in the Dhammapada commentary. This is attributed to the Buddha, but we can't find this quotation anywhere else in the suttas. We've only found it as an embedded verse in the Dhammapada. It's a kind of hapax legomenon. Occurs only once in Dhammapada, story 2, section 1, or volume 1, page 1 of the Pali edition. It's on page 83. This is where the Buddha says, through being together in the past or through present friendliness, even so this love is born like a blue lotus in the water. Being together in the past, so past roots, and then you're kind to each other in the present. Of course, we can't be going around checking people's past. There's no way of checking past karma. But there's an easy way to know this. If you're able to meet someone, chances are you've met this person in the past. And next thing, you've got to treat this person well. So this is how you build up this connection in this life. The next point, we've got to ask ourselves, when we talk about love, who's the person we truly love the most? Here we have this very interesting sutta, short, sweet sutta, Piya Malika Sutta. The Queen Malika, a very intelligent woman. This story of this sutta is like the essence of Shakespeare's King Lear, especially the opening part, where the king asks his 3 daughters, tell me how much you love me. Then each of you will get a part of the kingdom. It's a foolish old king actually. So he asked the first daughter, the daughter said, well, I love you like this, like that, some precious thing. Praise the king, praise the old doddering king. The king is very happy. Okay, here you are, take 1/3 of the kingdom. The second daughter says something sweet also, I love you like this, like that, some very wonderful thing. And then the second daughter got her part of the kingdom. The youngest daughter, Cordelia, is very honest, perhaps a little naive though. She said, I don't know what to say. Because love is such a serious thing. Then the king said, no, you must know something. Surely you love me in some way. That's really something you like. The doctor said, hey, it's hard for me to say. He said, come on, what is it you like the most? And she said something like, well, I like salt, so suppose I love you like salt, The king was not very happy. Yeah. So the poor Cordelia got banished. And the king got into a lot of trouble because the two daughters turned on him and threw him out. He went blind and went crazy. Fortunately, there was no such tragedy in the case of King Pasenadi and Queen Malika, because Malika was very wise. The king is a little bit of wishy-washy kind of king, so this advice is very powerful. So he asked the queen one day, says, is there someone you love more than yourself? You see, the king was hoping that the queen would say, oh yes, I love you more than I love myself, the kind of, again, Hindi movie motif, So the king was hoping the queen would say that. But the queen knew very well, that's not the real thing. The reality is we all love ourselves the most. But how to say this? So, the Queen Malika answers, there is no one, Maharaja, dearer to me than myself. Is there, Maharaja, anyone more dear to you than yourself? Okay, the second part was the safety catch, So he has asked the king, don't you love yourself more than anyone else? So, and this is the golden rule, just as it is true for you, it is true for me. So the king is caught in his own question. Of course, he felt a little unhappy because he's bitten by a woman. And he goes to the Buddha says, well, the Buddha says, you're a very wise queen, you should be happy with that. So the Buddha says, having traversed all the quarters with the mind, one finds that each one of us holds the self as dear. Therefore, one should not harm another, for each of us loves self the most. That's another expression of the golden rule. So this love of the self is very important, in other words. Because if you understand the nature of self-love, then you begin to understand why that you got to respect other people also. And this is a very important aspect of for example, what we call Velu Dwaraya Sutta, Salayaka Sutta, and so on, where we talk about the precepts, where the precepts are important. We do not want to die. So the very fact we feel that way, other people also feel the same way, so we should show our loving kindness to others. And unfortunately, later religion, especially the God religion, they tend to play down the idea of the self. You say, oh, self is bad. If you love yourself, it is selfish. Of course, if you love yourself, you stop there, it is definitely selfish. But we got to go beyond that, in other words. Because if you love yourself, then you also understand that other people have the same feelings. This is a real powerful lesson. When you compare yourself to others, rather than comparing others to yourself, so to speak. Eric Fromm has a lot to say about this. It's on page 84. So you find that as we understand the nature of self-love, then we also understand self-respect, self-concern, and self-respect means you tell yourself, I should not do this bad thing, because people will laugh at me, or worse, they won't respect me. Or you can say, I should not do this bad thing. Why? Because there's karma, there are moral consequences. That is other respect, if you like. Yeah? Or rather, it's the other way around. Other aspects where you feel that shame might come to you, other people might laugh at you. Right? Whereas self-respect, karma come on you. So these are different ways you can look at this problem here. Of course, when self-love is overdone, there's too much of it, then it's very negative. It can be destructive. In fact, so destructive is this kind of self-love, exclusive self-love, that the Greeks, ancient Greeks, even have a story for this, the story of Narcissus. It's on page 85, section 333. Narcissus, according to Greek mythology, is a very handsome young hunter, a very exceptionally beautiful young man. So a lot of people fell in love with him, even the gods fell in love with him, but he was very arrogant, he spurned everyone, so proud of himself. But this is the irony in the Greek mythology. The gods had the power to control people, and they could easily make this person love them if they want to, but somehow it didn't work that way. So you know very well these are stories invented by the wise ancient Greeks to teach other human beings. So the gods, failing to get Narcissus to love them, the story goes that either Venus as Aphrodite or Nemesis is like a crime god. He like karma. It is the god of karma. Like if someone does something, a bad crime, this Nemesis will come and punish him. So either Venus or Nemesis makes Narcissus fall in love with his own image. So he went to the water to drink and he saw his own image and he fell in love with it. He fell in love with it so much, he was like Wakali, looking at the Buddha, he becomes a monk just to see the Buddha. So he looks at his image, he falls in love with his image, and he just couldn't tear himself away from this image in the water. And he remained there looking at the time, trying to touch it, and then he repulsed away, and then he has to look at it again, and he just got caught up with this. And the story went, of course, you don't take food, you die. So this young man dies. And the Greek gods, in their great compassion, or Greek compassion if you like, turns him into a flower, a plant called a narcissus. And it's a very poetic plant, in the English call it daffodil. So narcissism is a self-lasting personality. People who put themselves above everything else, above others, like an asura-like kind of mentality. And this can be very destructive both ways. So in a sense, this kind of love is also as conceit, where we measure others with, oh, I'm the best, I love myself that much, other people are not like that, are not good like that. So we start measuring people, and that's how our life goes along. We are never happy, but all the time measuring, looking to be better than others all the time. Unfortunately, this often happens in our human life if we are not skilled. So this is where the Chinese, for example, have a saying, there's a tiger in the hill, so there can be only one tiger in the hill, so to speak, so even two tigers are in trouble. So this tiger must be a very narcissistic tiger. So if we have such leaders, then the organization may be successful, but it's a very cruel kind of organization where things appear all right, but the reality is very painful. The people who work for it suffer. And ultimately, people who really are under the weight of this kind of organization should sooner or later will feel being crushed by it. So we have to be very careful. How do we prevent or identify such a situation? The best way, of course, is through self-examination. We have to look at ourselves, especially when we join a group. When we join any group, we've got to ask ourselves, what happens to me when I join this group? Number one, do I feel happier? Do I become a better person? These two very important questions. The interesting thing about joining the group is that if everybody says the same thing and you say something different, you feel very uncomfortable. So you tend to adjust the way you think, even if it is right. You're the only one who's right. You're trying to blend in with the group, otherwise you feel left out. This is an example of dogma. You have to give up your idea and join this group. Of course, if your idea is wrong, it's okay, but if your idea is right and everyone else is wrong, then it's a pity, right? So this is where, there's a saying, the group is always wrong. The group never thinks. only individual things. Of course, you can share the thoughts, and from that thought you get feedback, you discuss. So this is something that you got to keep on asking yourself, what happens to me when I join a group? Do I become happier? Is my life more meaningful? Do I benefit other people in a good way? One important clue, of course, if you respect the Dharma, then the group is safe. Why? Because the group has a higher purpose. The group is not a mere herd, instinctive herd, no. There's a higher purpose. The group is guided by the Dharma. The Dharma deals with individuals. The Dharma makes individuals of each member of the group, so to speak, like the great holy Sangha of the Buddha's time, the Arhats. The Arhats may form a Sangha, but they're all individuals. They're individual atoms working together, but they're all still atoms, so to speak. So the spiritual group is defined by its individuals. In the worldly situation, the individual is defined by the group. For example, I'm Chinese, I'm Indian, I'm Malay, I'm Western, whatever, you're defined by the group, right? But if you're truly great, like the Buddha, we never think of the Buddha, he's great because he's Indian. Not at all. We think he's great because he's Buddha. We don't bother about the fact he's Indian. So this is where we have to understand each of the group and the individual. So this idea of knowing yourself, loving yourself is very important. The Buddha taught this. And one of the modern spokesmen for this idea is Eric Fromm, section 3334. How self-love can be healthy. Eric Fromm is a wonderful interpreter of this very wholesome kind of love in modern words. And when he discovered Buddhism, he was so happy, like fish into water. Before that, he was using Christian ideas. That's the best he had. After that, he used Buddhist ideas. Look at what he writes here in his book, published in 1997. What book is this? 1997. Let me look at the bibliography. Eric Fromm, 1997. Is it there? It's called Love, Sexuality and Matriarchy About Gender. Okay, it's one of its not so well-known book. Yeah? It's given in the bibliography. On page 163, it says, modern culture is pervaded by a taboo on selfishness. It teaches that to be selfish is sinful and to love others is virtuous. To be sure, this doctrine is not only in flagrant contradiction to the practices of modern society, but it also is in opposition to another set of doctrines which assumes that the most powerful and legitimate drive in man is selfishness, and that each individual, by following this imperative drive, also does the most for the common good. Of course, what he says is almost ironic. So what he's saying is the most common universal love is actually selfish love. In a sense, the Buddha says the same thing when he says we do not like to be killed, we love life. He's saying that we all have that kind of love, right? So, but he then turns the table and says, by that very same token, you must also accept that other people have the same feeling. So this is what Eric Fromm is trying to say in different words. We all love ourselves, otherwise we won't survive. By that very same token, other people also love themselves, so we have to respect others too. This is a wonderful statement. Then Eric Fromm goes on to criticize some of these really dogmatic and narrow ideas by those Christian reformists. John Calvin especially. He's a really dark man. He's like the Ayatollah of the early of the medieval the medieval Christians, late medieval Christians if you like. Let's look at what he has to say. This principle has found its classic expression in Calvin's theology. Man is essentially bad and powerless. Can you imagine that? That's the first thing to say. You are powerless and you're bad. He can do nothing, absolutely nothing, good on the basis of his own strength or merit. We are not our own, says Calvin in his Institute of the Christian Religion, published in 1536. Therefore, neither our reason nor our will should predominate in our deliberation and actions. He has contradicted himself by saying this, because if we want to throw our reason, but then we should not be reading what is written here, and this is unreasonable. So there will be a problem there. On the contrary, he says, we are God's. We belong to God. To him, therefore, let us live and die. So the higher purpose is God. For as it is the most devastating pestilence which ruins people if they obey themselves, it is the only haven of salvation, not to know or to want anything by oneself, but to be guided by God who walks before us. This doctrine, says Fromm, is rooted in contempt and hatred for oneself. Calvin makes this very point very clear. He speaks of self-love as a pest. This is the opposite of Buddhist idea. So what's wrong with putting God above us, you might say? Doesn't that make us really good and kind people? Of course, there are good people. But the question is this, I'd like to ask myself, what if people are already good first, and they were good in the first place, and then they accept this idea? Or is it because they accept the idea to putting God above them, then they become good? This is really highly controversial. From what I notice, that people are by nature already good. And in their culture, because this is the dominant idea. And people who place God above themselves are people I never want to meet. Very dangerous people. The conquistadores, the Spanish conquerors who overran the Americas, especially South America, they were conquering all those people in the name of God. And to them it's okay to kill these people because they're killing for God. My goodness, so they're pushing all the blame to God. We don't do that. We don't to blame anyone. And you can talk a lot about this thing. It's a very dark chapter in human history. Look at what the Buddha says, Dhammapada. Dhammapada 165, in contrast to what we have just heard just now. By one alone is evil done. By the self is one defiled. By oneself is evil not done. By the self is one purified. Purity and impurity are within oneself. No one may purify another. Dhammapada 165. Then Dhammapada 160. The self is the master of the self, or lord of the self, right? For who else could a master be? With a self, indeed, one gains a master that is hard to find. Dhammapada 160 and a similar one in Dhammapada 380. So here in the Buddha's teaching, you find self-love is given a very positive statement. Self-accountability. So whatever goes wrong, we don't blame anyone, especially not God. We say, well, looks like I'm to blame. Let me look for the answers within myself. Then we can solve the problem more effectively. And the point is that, we're not alone, because if you feel like that, the others also feel like that. So once you have this kind of understanding, then you can get along better with this kind of common moral vision. You begin to realize that you can't exist alone, you can't live alone, you need others. And you need to live together with this kind of golden rule, to live together in a happy, meaningful life. That's the meaning of moral virtue in Buddhism. There is no I without the others. And yet, to truly be with others, you got to let go, renounce the I. So once you understand that, then society is possible. Society means we must be willing to sacrifice a bit of that I-ness, that selfishness in us. For example, in other words, we work together to make roads, to have buildings, to have schools, to have shopping places, conveniences and so on, so that our life can be possible. so that family can be possible. So here we have this idea of family. Yeah? Now what is a family? A family is a group of people who live together with two parents or one parent sometimes. Of course, usually they live together. You have a nuclear family, two parents, two kids, a boy and a girl. Sometimes bigger, then you have maybe the family starts expanding and there's another one in another place. But usually when we say family, it will be under one roof or kind of within the same closed area, so to speak. Beyond that is kinship. Right? Maybe your aunt's house is somewhere else, so they're kin. But this kind of definition is very loose. Just give us a very general idea of how people are connected. The most important thing about family, according to Buddhism, is trust for each other. Visasa. If you have this trust, this closeness, then wherever you go, it's family. Visasa. Right? Those you trust are your true relatives. So later on, we will look at how, if we live within the same house, we got to show that love to each other, neighborliness, and so we'll come to that a little later. So in Buddhism, the family has got an extended meaning. Even within this, under the same roof, it's not just a biological family. Anyone living in the same house should be regarded as family and treated so. Especially the slaves, the workers in the house, the maids, in other words, they should be treated like family. If you look at the Sigalovada Sutta, you see that. To treat the family, to treat the workers properly and so on. Sigalovada Sutta. Section 4.2 talks about trust, talks about being close to each other. Right? For example, take an example of trust here, given in the Sigalovada Sutta, D31, section 23. Who is someone with this visasa or trust? The one constant in joy and sorrow, samana sukha dukkha, or in modern terms you say a friend through thick and thin, should be known as a true-hearted friend for these four reasons. He tells you his secrets, he keeps your secret, he does not abandon you in your troubles, he would even give up his own life for you. He will even risk his life to do so if needed. The one who is constant in joy and sorrow, young house lord, should be known as a true-hearted friend for these four reasons. So this is an example of visasa, trust. Very high standards, if you see. So in other words, when the Buddha talks about love, his love must be shown. I can imagine, there was this critic online which said the Buddha doesn't know about love. Only the Christians knew about love. So he only reads all these things and here this talk. So love is a sense of accepting another person. And we see even the monks do this. Especially, the monks, sometimes there are a few of them who live together in a forest for meditation. And Anuruddha's example is very famous. He lives in the forest with two other people, Nandiya and Kimbila. So when the Buddha visits him, this is recorded in the Upakilesa Anuruddha Sutta, M128. The Buddha visits him and asks, how are you? How are things going on? Are you happy together? Now Anuruddha says, this is very famous lines here. I'm going to read the whole thing here. Bhante, here I think thus, it is a gain for me, it is a great gain for me, that I am dwelling with such companions in the holy life. Bhante, I keep up acts of loving kindness through deed, both openly and in private towards the venerables. In other words, the action is done openly, before when they are present, when they need help, and when they're not there also, the action is still kind to these people. It's not like in front of them do nice things, behind their back do bad things. Bhante, I keep up acts of loving kindness through speech, both openly and in private, towards these venerables. So speaks to them nicely, speaks to others behind their back also in the same vein. Bhante, I keep up acts of loving kindness through thought, both openly and in private, towards these venerables. Bhante, I think thus, why should I not set aside what I wish to do and instead do what these venerables wish to do? then Bhante, I set aside what I wish to do and intend do what these venerables wish to do. Oh, this is really great self-sacrifice, right? It seems, Bhante, that we are of different bodies, but of one mind. You see this happening in a family also. The parents really love their children well. The parents will set aside their time, their work, their pleasure for the sake of the children. Very often we do this. So same thing in a group where these monks and monastics, they care for each other. They will set aside their own interests in many ways and make sure their fellow men in the Dhamma are happy. Now here you may say, doesn't this contradict with the teaching that, no matter how good others are, we must attend to our good? Here is a social aspect, making the people around us happy and safe so that we all can practice together. But then after when you sit and meditate, you got to do that on your own. I can't meditate for you, so to speak. That's different. So you're talking about two different levels. Social level, we care for each other. Mental level, you got to care for yourself. Okay? In your meditation, that is. So in other words, we do not look for faults in others, but we work together. So let me close today's study by reading this reflection, this verse here from Sutta Nipata S255. He is no friend who is relentlessly suspects discord, always looking for faults. But like a son in the bosom, is truly a friend inseparable from others. But like a son in the bosom, is truly a friend inseparable from others. It is in this spirit you find in Southeast Asia. I was in Thailand many years, 5 years. You see, people are so close to each other. Even the men are close to each other. Men and they hold hands, even hug each other. In this spirit, like a son in the bosom. In other words, they have this special feeling, which is not physical, for each other. So this is where people who this person who spoke against the Buddha said, the Buddha does not know love, but in the end he has finished his talk, and he appears on the YouTube again. He says, I have an addendum. I think I regretted saying certain things. His exact words, he regretted saying certain things and not saying certain things. Actually, he says, despite what I've said, I've seen Buddhists, in Buddhist countries, Buddhist monks, nuns and so on, they're really kind and loving to each other. So somehow they show this. Maybe there's a kind of either a secret transmission or as a teaching beyond the written word. He sees this. The point is, you see this in a Buddhist practitioner, obviously the teaching is there too. So it's very clear that the Buddhist community, a real Buddhist community, is also a loving community. So we'll stop there for the moment. Then our next talk, we will talk on the humanization process, and then slowly we go on into other aspects of hospitality, neighborliness, loving kindness, and so on. Any questions? No? Okay, so let us close with a short reflection. Once again, we are reminded of Buddhist love, of various levels of human need to connect with others. The most important person we must connect with, of course, is ourselves. Once we look within ourselves, we see peace. Or maybe we see needs. And what we see in ourselves, we must understand, we can also see in others. So if you see others in yourself, then you are able to connect with others too. This is another way of looking at the Golden Rule. And this is one of the most wonderful teachings that the Buddha has given us. Such clarity and fullness, reflecting in this joyful way that the power of this wonderful good karma. May our minds quickly focus. May we be free from harm and danger. May we attain mental focus in our meditations. And above all, may we attain spiritual liberation, namely stream winning in this life itself. In this moment of peace and joy, let us send our loving kindness to all those people we care for people whom the Dhamma have not touched, that they may see the Dhamma in themselves and be truly happy and good. May all beings be well and happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.